Welcome back to our series on the 8 deadly thoughts. This week, our deadly thought is the one that got dropped when the 8 deadly thoughts were turned into the 7 deadly sins. So this week's deadly thought is sadness. Now we kind of think sadness, why is that a deadly thought? Don't we sometimes encourage people that it's okay to be sad in certain situations? That sadness is a natural and right feeling? You're right. The sadness that the deadly thoughts is talking about is the sadness that arises when we compare our achievements with those of others and find we're kind of disappointed with our lives. This sadness is a form of self-pity, which we may experience as we think about what we might have become had we not suffered from the restrictions that come with being a Christian or some other outside force. And we compare ourselves to others and think, man, why couldn't I have done that? What if I had done this? And we start feeling sadness, and that's regret. So rather than finding joy in following Christ's ways, we think of all the pleasures we could have had were it not for our obedience. Man, if I weren't a Christian, I could do this, that, or the other thing. I wouldn't feel guilty about doing this or that. I could go golfing every Sunday morning. That kind of sadness. Sadness in itself is not bad. God and Christ are shown to be sad in the Bible. But sadness, when it is divorced from life with God, can become detrimental to our spiritual health. The deadly thought of sadness also arises when we ask ourselves, what might I have become were it not for my brothers and sisters, or my spouse, or my social background, my race, my gender, the economic situation I was born into? These thoughts are frequently accompanied with anger at those whom we hold responsible for the lackluster life which we now feel trapped in, or against those who have what we desire. So something to think about. Factors such as race, gender, place of birth, family can and do impact lives, and they should not be dismissed. Working to dismantle those are sometimes part of working for justice. But what are the dangers of dwelling in that sadness about what we do not have or what we are not? Sadness is a deadly thought fraught with unrealistic fantasies of how much greater we might have become. Sadness is a deadly thought that keeps us focused on ourselves again, and so we do not appreciate what we have and what is around us. We become self-consumed in our sadness about any situation. We aren't seeing the blessings we have in our lives. Even something it is appropriate to feel sadness about can begin to be destructive. Have you ever read one of those alumni magazines and got depressed about the accomplishments of others that you graduated with? How did they get to be so successful? Why am I just me? Or have you ever looked on Facebook and you start seeing how other people's lives are? Their homes, their seemingly perfect kids, the amount of time they have to go on this or that vacation. We compare ourselves to others. That's when jealousy creeps in. That's also where sadness creeps in. We get sad about our own lives because we don't have what it seems others seemingly do have. It signifies that we still have not fully received the freedom of a Christian who does not live under the bondage of achievement, but whose primary self-understanding and identity is based on God's positive and loving view. We can fill ourselves with sadness when we don't see our lives the way God sees us. So something to think about. How has sadness affected your relationship with God and your view of yourself? We may not think of sadness as having much spiritual significance, but sadness can be an indicator of our priorities, what we place value in, and how we define ourselves. Sadness can build walls that keep us from others and from seeing what God is doing in our lives right here and right now. It's okay to be sad. Sadness is natural, it's right. But sometimes, if we aren't careful, sadness can keep us from seeing what God is doing in our lives. And it can become to the point where we're so self-absorbed in our life and our perceived miseries, it's all about us. And that's not the Christian life.